Hey, what's your problem? You have business problems? We have business solutions.
Once in a blue moon.
Well, maybe. Life is a fight. In business, every day is a fight.
Certainly.
So, hey, what's your problem?
Yes, thank you, John David Wells, with the Wells Report. You can find him on Facebook. What a great guy. He may be here. Talked to him this morning. He said February might be out, but sometime in 2023, he may be making a trip to Nashville. We'll be sure to get Mr. Wells on the show and talk to him about what's keeping him up at night. It's always something. This is the What's Your Problem podcast, where we talk to Middle Tennessee business owners and professionals about the one thing. It's always something that keeps you up at night that's just bothering you. Maybe, not all the time. But there's always something. It's life. This is a video and audio podcast. Check us out at whatsyourproblempodcast.com. Like, subscribe, share, rate, review, all that fun stuff. 2023 is the year. We are going for, I said 5,000 downloads per episode, but I'm going to shoot for 10,000. Let's just raise that number, because if I shoot for 10 and I land at 1,000 or 1,500, that's great. 10x rule, so they say. Check us out again, whatsyourproblempodcast.com. My name is Jim McCarthy. I'm your host with Jim McCarthy voiceovers.com today. And we have somebody coming down from the Franklin area, Mr. Brian Covey. Sir, thank you for coming out once again.
Yeah.
Reprising your appearance on the show in the new space. Last time you were on, we talked about a multitude of things regarding business and real estate and the mortgage industry leadership, which is kind of your thing, right?
As the jam. It's been a while.
It's been a while. A lot of things have changed. You're in a new organization. Podcast that you have, the name has changed in a lot more direction. And you're a published author at this point.
How about that?
Podcast host, speaker, investor.
All of it.
Empire builder.
Right.
That's right. So as you know, we always have these fun little special... there we go. The Dad Joke Challenge is the feature we're going to do. So I always give people a choice between the Random 5 and the Dad Joke Challenge. Lately, that Dad Joke Challenge has been winning. So it is brought to you by it'syourshow.co. If you want a podcast like this, let us know. If you need podcast intros, strategy, coaching, full-on production, you needed us to bring it to you and set up your conference room for a podcast studio, we can do that. So check us out, it'syourshow.co. Best way to cultivate marketing content and clips. Are you ready for the Dad Joke Challenge,
Let's
Brian?
do this.
I know, it's about time we get to it. All right, question number 1. The way it works, even though we don't keep score, if you laugh, you lose a point. I gain a point, but no one's keeping score.
Okay.
All right. What does a lemon say when it answers the phone?
Ooh, do not know.
Yellow.
Oh, that's like Olo.
I know.
You know that movie?
Yeah. Yes, that was Megamind.
Megamind. There we go.
That's right. I remember that. All right. Joke number 2. The graveyard looks overcrowded. People must be dying to get in.
Oh, man.
I know.
Yeah. That is good, though. That's a good one.
Thank you. How do you make 7 even?
Ooh. I'm giving up on that one.
Take away the S.
Oh. Yeah, I give up a point.
I know.
I relinquished the point.
That one was kind of funny. Let's see. Why didn't the skeleton climb the mountain?
Never seen a skeleton climb a mountain, but why?
Didn't have the guts.
Oh.
Yeah. We're almost done. Just one more. The pain will go away, I promise. How does a taco say grace?
Ooh, I love tacos. I don't know.
Let us pray.
Oh, man. Lettuce, cheese.
A lot of groaners on this one.
How about that? Make me hungry for tacos now is what that made.
Maybe we can grab lunch after this. Who knows?
Right?
All right. Well, there you go. The Dad Joke Challenge brought to you by it'syourshow.co. Check us out if you want a podcast or anything like that. That is the place to go. So, been producing your podcast for several years right now. I mean, I think I might have been the catalyst and I was your inspiration per the Chicago song.
You were.
Was I?
You were. I was like, how do we start a podcast?
Right.
Should I even be doing one? And then like, where does it even go from here?
It started as a Brian Covey show, and now it's called Finding Your Competitive Edge.
Way better.
Is it way better?
Well, you know the story of, I thought, man, I'm going to be cool like Ed Milet, right?
Right.
And I'm going to go, well, what's Ed's podcast? The Ed Milet Show.
Right.
Well, I'm not as well known as Ed, so let's be
Yet.
real. Yet.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did the Finding the Competitive Edge come about? What was the impetus for that?
So a lot of my background, in sports, and I love people that are competitive. Like that's my jam.
Right.
And I think everybody has an edge. And so you think about, for most of us, we don't know how to find it. We don't know what it is. And then you live life and you don't have really anything different in the world.
Right.
I thought, well, what if we could help people find their competitive edge, create it over and over, and actually grow that? And if you look at the most successful people, look, they know what they're great at. They know what makes them different.
Right.
And they have an edge about them, right? It's a little bit of anyone you see today on social that we follow or has written a great book, there's an edge. That's
Yeah.
why they wrote the book. They're trying to get you to think differently.
I call it, what's your big idea, right? The big idea behind your personal brand, your personality. In a way, it's a podcast that, you're kind of feeling people out. I mean, are you actively on the podcast trying to find their competitive edge, or talking about, like, do they already know what it is?
Well, that's a great question. So most of them are already have found theirs, which is great. So we're going to teach people, how did they find it? What is it? And then how do they use that in the service of others? Either to make more money, to become more famous, to serve more people, whatever it is, but walk them through the formula, because I'm curious how did they discover it?
Right.
Did they create it? Was it things they already had in place? And then I'll talk about my own journey on my solo episodes as well.
So what was, can you put that in the synopsis of your own journey?
Yeah. So I look back at mine as there's always been a drive for me from sports and spending time with my dad. I think about going into the basketball court or spending time on the soccer field. And I can remember going out, getting ready to go play college, and I would go and just do more than was asked. Well, if I'm a parent, I'm going to need to do more than's asked.
Yeah.
If I'm a business leader, I need to do more than is asked of me.
Right.
Anyone successful today, they don't do the minimum, right? Have you ever seen anyone successful that just did the minimum all the time?
Right.
I've yet to meet them. And so I look back at when I was the most successful, and what made me different was I was willing to do hard things all the time. I was willing to put in the hard work and the effort. I was willing to sweat and do things that, look, a lot of people weren't out there in Memphis training beforehand in 100-degree heat.
Right.
Willing to put it in. And so I found when I go back to that, most of us have that early in our life. And it could be adversity you've overcome. It could be things that are recurring patterns. So look, when I'm performing my best, I'm competing.
Yeah.
Against a goal I have, against someone else, I'm competing. And so I realized that for me, that's in my DNA. Why try to hide that?
And coincidentally, you mentioned a lot of, you're big on goal setting, but you were an actual goalkeeper.
How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, really weird. So you think about goalkeepers too, and this is something that, this is how I found my competitive edge in the world as well, is I went out. Think about a goalkeeper. If someone's coming on a breakaway and you have a forward that's coming at you, you have two types of people. One's going to stay on their line, stay in their box, and they're going to wait. I'm going to let them come to me. Maybe they make a bad touch. Maybe they make a bad shot. It goes wide. I'm just hoping the other person makes a mistake.
Yeah.
Well, the people that played with me clearly know I'm on the more, I'm coming out of my box if I can, and I'm going to bring the pressure and attack them. So I face challenges, and I'm willing to run into the fire, so to speak, in life.
And that's a risky move.
That is a risky move. And it doesn't always pay off, right?
Right.
But how do you learn? You have to go take those. Because sitting back, what did you learn?
Right.
Oh, the other person messed up. I'm going to wait for other people to mess up to be successful? No.
But there's like even in the soccer arena in goalkeeping, there's that sweet spot. You're shortening the distance between the two players as they're coming to you. And my wife coaches soccer, or did in the past. It drives her nuts. Like, you got to come out of the goal a little bit, because otherwise you got this massive space and area. The closer they get, they've got more opportunity to take advantage of that.
That's it.
So there's got to be that sweet spot, though. That's almost perfection, like the null set distance. Is that kind of makes sense? Is that a reality in that game?
Well, it's not talked about enough, but I believe part of my success in any great goalkeeper was really the mental side of the game. You have to be able to read a situation and make a split-second decision. How far do I come out? Am I cutting off the angle? Do I have the right angle? Are they coming with their left foot? Are they going to go to their right? Which way do they like to go? Are they going to dribble around me? Or are they going to shoot early? all these things are processing in your brain fast.
Yeah.
It gets you to process a lot of information and be decisive.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't that be great in life if we could be more decisive?
And that's the mark of a pretty good leader, is that just make the decision to move on.
That's it. Most people struggle with that. So that'll be part of our podcast that we do dive into of how do you then take that once you've learned and deploy that out to become more successful.
Right. What kind of stories have you been told that really stand out in your mind that somebody's found their competitive edge?
What I have learned from most people is they discount their uniqueness. So think about things that you've done in your life that you just think are commonplace, like people that maybe grew up with one parent, right? Or maybe they were abused, or maybe they've lost everything in their life and they go back and go, man, or they were dyslexic. Like we had someone that they couldn't read in high school and they've had to teach themselves all these things that you think maybe I'm not that unique, or maybe I'm hiding it because I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
Right. Both of those happen. That's what makes you unique.
Yeah.
That is the audience. Rory Vaden says it best. We love Rory, is the person you're most equipped to serve and really to give back to is who you once were. So the more versions of myself I can create, the more people I can reach, is because I'm willing to share stories and unpack it. And so the people that I've listened to, they're just not afraid to share who they've been.
Yeah.
Because that's the person they're trying to reach.
So in other words, it's reflecting on your life in general and how many different seasons you've had. And obviously that comes over time with age. Yeah. I have this conversation all the time, even with my guys here, that I'm pushing 50 at this point in my life. And you guys really don't, it's amazing when you turn 40, that's a season changer. And for a lot of people around that age.
Yeah.
For me, it was a drastic change in my life. And I remember the previous seasons in my life where I had a horrible self-esteem. I beat up on myself. I wasn't good enough in my own mind. I was told always that if you didn't go to college and graduate, you were just basically on a plan for failure.
Yeah.
And that when you're told that, it sticks. Even though I was in a business and radio that I was good at and I excelled at, the money wasn't there, so there was always something lacking, even though every day I loved getting up and doing what I did. It's just I knew in the back of my mind this is all well and good, but, some days the party's going to end and you got to grow up.
Yeah.
So, either you're going to have to do something that you're kind of marginally okay with, or you're going to, it was when I doubled down on myself. The car business really taught me a lot about confidence and believing in myself. Oddly enough, with somebody who never met me before, one of my customers said, "You need to be selling luxury Highline." Oh, okay.
Okay.
My family, my in-laws, my brother, my wife, my kids could tell me till it blew in the face, you can totally do that, but I wouldn't listen. It took somebody I didn't know.
Isn't that crazy?
It is.
Somebody comes in your life and they see something in you. And that was the journey of leadership, even for me, is one of those gifts of I see things in people that they don't see in themselves and get them to believe that. Because if you don't believe it, you're not creating confidence.
Right.
And that's self-talk and what you tell yourself. But when you create a breakthrough like you did, and then you go, okay, maybe there's some truth to that.
And then you have the experience of success with it.
Yeah.
Tremendous confidence builder.
That's it.
I really don't care about the college thing anymore because I know I could make it work. Based on who I am, who I know, my relationships, all the different things that come into play with the confidence factor.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? Yeah, I can totally do this. In the beginning, when I first became self-employed, it was like, harrowing because we only had one paycheck to go until we were out of gas. And every little project, I was so transparent. I mean, you can go back and look at my LinkedIn, my YouTube, see videos from 2016. Hey, I was just fired yesterday. I was that transparent. I put it all out there.
Yeah.
I got so many opportunities off of that video. You know what I mean? Just by being real.
People want to know.
Yeah.
They're like, man, you got fired. I want to help you. Our inclination in humans, we want to help majority of the people, right? They want to help, especially those on LinkedIn.
Especially those who want to be helped.
Yeah, that's right.
Who will take the help.
That's right.
And it's amazing how many people, because I do that. I see people that, hey, I'm having a hard time here. I can't make ends meet. I've got, my job isn't paying me enough and I can't take on a new one. I don't want to Uber. I don't want to DoorDash, and it's one of those things I reach out and I say, you know what? Let's start networking. Let's start getting you in front of people. What is it you do best?
That's right.
Finding your competitive edge.
Yeah, that's right. We're gonna help a lot of people, I think, with this because whether you're doing this, and then I think it's also going to trickle down. You're doing it for yourself, but I also think like working with 15-year-old, 14-year-old, and my daughter plays, as you know, competitive soccer, helping her build confidence.
Right.
When you find your competitive edge, you build your confidence. So all that stuff that we just talked, it all goes together.
Yeah.
Without confidence, you really, And all of us have some self-doubt and limiting beliefs.
Right.
But when you start to overcome those, okay, you get to the next level. Then you're going to overcome those next ones, get to the next level. It's a never-ending journey.
Yeah.
Guess what? You're never going to be to a point where you're like, I've got it all figured out. I am perfect. Not in this lifetime.
That's the notion of when you're green, you grow, when you're ripe, you rot.
That's right.
We're always learning. I mean, even as we kind of go through life and we've had opportunities to invest, you and I have talked about investments and things of that nature with different funding that I can potentially put somewhere. I just don't know how to go about that. I've never done anything like that. Yeah. And it's getting around people like you that have been down that path. Okay, show me how to do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Give me the roadmap.
And it's just not being afraid to ask.
That's right.
And just being bold enough. And I've always been, in the past, especially 7 years, very bold to ask. It's gotten me a lot of places. It's gotten me to meet, big people.
Huge people. Yeah. Well, it goes back to a lot of us, and I've heard people say, I was brought up, probably like many people.
Yeah.
You don't ask about money.
Right.
You don't ask people about what they're doing and all of that. I mean, when you start to change that and you start to ask questions of, hey, I would love to learn. And I don't mean getting into somebody's personal business on that level, but to a point of how did you start investing? How much do you invest in yourself? How do you do these things today? Where did you start? If we're not able to have those conversations, money is, if you're not willing to have conversations about it, how can you get great at it?
Yeah.
It's like learning a language. You would go and study it. Well, we don't study money. We don't understand the trade and exchange of what's happening and then how to multiply it.
It's a mindset thing. And I think maybe I'm answering that question for you. Why don't we ask about money more often? It was taught to me growing up in the Northeast where a lot of old money is.
Yes.
And you never talk about it. You never bring it up. It's none of your business. You don't talk about tax returns or anything like that because it's none of you.
Right.
And in the business space, when you have employees, you've come out of a situation in the mortgage industry where a lot of your teams are based on meritocracy.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
Their performance dictates their income, right? And how much they close and their production, right? In a typical, where you're paying somebody a wage, like here, we just had our meeting with our guys, and one of the things we went over was our handbook. And in there it says confidentiality, which means shut up about how much you get paid.
Right.
Okay. And there's a reason for that.
That's right.
Human nature is to be very envious.
Yeah.
Well, and I found I do the same thing you do, but you're getting paid $1 or $2 more than I am. Why is that? That's not fair.
That's right.
And it's then you get into that.
Yeah.
I think ultimately is why we just don't talk about money.
Yeah. In certain situations, that's exactly right. Yeah. But I think there's a lot more situations where people want to learn, how do I go invest? How do I now take this money that I've saved? What's the best way to go and deploy that?
Yeah. And it's you don't have to be so transparent, I guess, with the person. If you trust them, you could be specific about numbers and stuff like that. But I mean, dude, I would never in the world think to ask you, well, how much you making? Dude,
no.
There's
things like that. I say we stay away from it.
Yeah.
But if you want to learn the game and the rules of the game, then there's people that will teach you at a level that will help you where you're at today.
There are people like you that will teach them.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people that won't.
That's right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and then we connect them with experts. I tell Rez, look, I've figured out things that have worked for me, but there are experts. And when you go down these roads, you might want to get a specialist in a certain area.
Right.
Like I always tell us, you have to have a great CPA. You have to have if you have assets and you're in the market, financial planners, right? You need, these people are part of your wealth team. When you start to build that up, that's where you can start to make moves.
Yeah. And it's somebody, even if you have a small amount of money, they have at least feign an interest in you that, like they're treating you like a, multi-million-dollar client.
That's right.
Because sometimes, even though I might be small potatoes, I still need, I don't want to feel like I'm bothering you, but dude, I need some sort of
advice. Yeah, guidance.
And I've got a guy, and that was Zach Hurd. He's great with that. Mike Mercurio is great with that. So finding your competitive edge, is there a synopsis or methodology process that you mentioned it before? What's that all about? What does that look like? Is there a step-by-step process?
One of my favorite questions to ask people is, tell me about the hardest season in your life.
Okay.
Like whether you hit rock bottom or you got divorced, you lost everything, you got fired from your job. Tell me about that hardest season.
And I'll answer that. We'll role play this because it's funny. I can't think of one immediately. Maybe it's that 2016 time.
How about when you got fired from your job? You talked about that shift.
But it wasn't dark for me. I had a lot of hope.
Doesn't have to be dark.
No.
How quickly did you rebound and jump back in the game?
Oh, next day.
Why?
Because the previous several years, I had an opportunity. I got fired from another job.
Okay.
Man, I'm batting 1,000. I got fired from another job, and we had the notion I was getting out of radio. This little offshoot was on my way to the car business. It was with a collision in business, and it wasn't really. I mean, the guy fired like 7 people the first week I worked there. Yeah. So it was one of those things that I told my wife. We were making a great salary. She's like, "Well, we can do that." I said, "No. Let's hold on to the money. Yeah. Let's put it away." And she goes, we never had margin in our life. Yeah. And she goes, "Why?" I said, "He just fired like 5 people. So I don't know how long this is going to last. So let's just, work this. I'll do the best I can." It was, I let all my side hustles go, all my voiceover clients go, all my video clients that I'd built up over the years in radio as side hustles. I just wanted to focus on this, right? Yeah. And it was something in my mind. I'm like, I would just love to do this for one company, all the things that I can do. So I let it all go by the wayside. 2.5 months later, get a phone call. "Hey, come into my office." Okay, here we go. That ended. And I had the notion in my mind before I went into the car business, because that was the next obvious step, was like, I probably can do the production thing on my own. But the confidence wasn't there yet. My wife was like, maybe you need to do the car thing. Yeah. And I did need to do it. And for the first 4 months, it was dark. It was very, a lot of just, what the heck am I doing? I'm new at this. I'm uncomfortable. This isn't fun, until I committed to it. And then I took one leg from being out the door and, closed the door, and I was committed into the actual animal of the car business. Yeah. Met so many people. The guy who told me you need to be selling luxury Highline, which moved me to Mercedes. Yep. Never thought of myself selling that kind of a car, talking with people of that stature. When you realize it, you're talking to people. The numbers are just bigger. That's it. Yeah, that's the only difference. So when that all ended, I transitioned into another job, which it wasn't really a fit. We're still on good terms. I've actually had the guy on my podcast. He's probably going to be talking about doing a podcast with me at some point, but it wasn't a good fit, and we kind of knew that going along. I spent 9 months there. But I started actively building up all my side hustles again, because based on that experience, I'm like, I'm never letting that happen again. Yeah. And being out of the car business, I had time now to build up my side hustles, voiceover and things of that nature. So when that ended, it was March of 2016, literally came in and they handed me a paycheck. "Sorry, it's just not working out." Okay. Yeah. One paycheck to go, Brian. Yeah. We were out. But I came home from that experience, called my wife. She was planning a camping trip for us to go on. I said, "Well, we're probably not going to be able to do that." "Well, what about Disney World?" We're going to Disney World in May that year. And we had an opportunity to financially make it happen that was comfortable. And what about Disney? We're going. "Well, how are we going to go?" "I don't know."
We're going to figure it out.
We're going to figure it out. It's 3 months away. It's going to happen. We're just going to figure it out. And literally the first couple of weeks and months was, okay, this project pays the mortgage. This project pays our electric bill. This one's going to pay our car payments. This one's going to, and I've got the next month paid for. Yeah. I've got the next 2 months paid for. Now I've got the next 3. So it was one of those transitionary periods, to answer your question. Yeah. Long answer, I know. But,
well, as I listen to it, I think about a couple things, and I'll take you down this process so people listening can find their competitive edge as well. So what I heard you say, you were able to transition quickly, you adapt, you move into different seasons, and you recognize, okay, this one I need to focus on the one linear role. That's what I need to do. Okay, this season now I can expand and have more side hustles. You're able to quickly assert, this is what I need to do, this is where I need to go, and I'm going to put my energy there. That's part of your competitive edge, right? Because that's how you rebound from things and setbacks. That you need to look at that pattern in your life. How do you rebound from setbacks? Most people, you can look at the distance between when they had the setback and to when they take the next action. That's going to tell you how mature you are in knowing your competitive edge and what's there. Really? Now let's flip the whole thing. What do people tell you that you're the best at? Like you know this in your heart. Like you're like, dude, I know I'm really good at this. Like I've spent enough time. What do people tell you and what do you believe to be true? And because you have results to back it up. Right. That you are great at.
First thing that comes to mind, everyone says voiceover. Yeah. That's my big, big idea about me. Next in line would be podcast production because of my radio background. Teaching selling techniques based on my fundamentals that I learned in the car business. Being able to kind of network with people, ask the right questions, seek out a sale, but in a relational way.
Yes.
So I guess that's probably the best way to articulate it.
So I would encapsulate all of that is you're able to relate to people, whether they are probably at different segments of their life.
Right.
You talked about the Mercedes-Benz, right? Like you're selling people high net worth buying cars over there. You could help somebody that's just doing a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're just getting started.
Yep.
So think about the range of people you're able to be relatable with.
Mm-hmm.
Now you see how your competitive edge starts to come together of, okay, now I have skill sets. Now I have an ability to take those and deploy them into the market to serve people that need me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the sky's the limit from there because now you know what you're great at. You know what you've overcome. You can teach other people how to do that. And by the way, you could monetize that, right?
Yeah.
You could teach people how to do those things because it's usually an intersection of what you love to do and then what you have results and what you've done.
Yeah. That's getting back to what you were talking about earlier about putting the extra hours in.
That's it.
It doesn't feel like extra hours when you love what you do.
So that's your edge. Because guess what? The next person that came in, they're like, I'm exhausted. I have to do these shows. I have to do this editing. And you probably get energy from some of that.
Yeah. Because it's, tell me more. Cry
Correct.
on my shoulder.
Yeah.
And, let me tell you how I'm going to save you from all this. Now, the next thing for me is hiring people to duplicate myself and scaling this thing.
Yeah. So you have your edge now. You know what your competitive edge is.
Yeah.
But then it's taking it. Now, how do I go and deploy that?
Yeah.
Right. And who are the people around me that are different than me?
Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand that even in business, how to scale.
That's it.
They create a job that owns them. They own a job, essentially.
Yeah. They're just renting it, right? That's what I tell them. It's like, you're just renting a job
Yeah.
and a lifestyle that you're
But not everybody has to be an entrepreneur or a business owner. Going along the lines of what Vaynerchuk talks about, if you can be the number 4 or number 5 in a Facebook or, a big company, I tell the guys here, we a lot of them can do side, moonlighting as electrical projects and putting up ceiling fans, switches in houses. And we encourage that because it's not something that's congruent with what we do. The lighting is what we do. They do the installations for the lighting products that we sell and the systems. But on the weekend, look, we're all about, we one of our things that we preach in our culture is that we're all salespeople here. We're always representing the company. You're always talking to, customers and stuff like that. If you can upsell them on stuff like that, guess what? You're going to get paid a commission.
Yeah.
On an existing, hey, if they bought these set of lights, but hey, why don't you put these lights on the side of your building? And if they upsell it, we're going to pay them on that.
Yeah.
If they discover new accounts that they can work with, if they go out, well, look, we're going to come up with the numbers for you, the proposal. We'll walk you through how to talk to the client about it. You got to close the deal and work the account, but you're going to get paid, a nice little commission on it. That's something we encourage. We encourage the side hustles, the moonlighting on the weekends. And, a lot of them are like, well, we can do this. I could do this on my own. You certainly can. But understand, there are 3 personalities that you need to understand who you are, which one of them.
Yeah.
You have the E-Myth. You ever read that book?
I remember it.
Yeah. The technician, the manager, and the entrepreneurs, the 3 personalities.
Yeah. And I've realized there's plenty of things I outsource that I do not want to do. I'm not good at. And why would I go do that? It's back to even when I've talked about your hourly rate, like and things like that, where no. And I'm a self-proclaimed intrapreneur with an entrepreneur spirit. So the intrapreneur is the one that has an entrepreneurial spirit. The person that they like to have ownership, but they're not the one that put up the capital. They're not the one with the original idea. They're not the one that's sitting in the CEO or founder or chairman seat. And I found myself for over 20 years being in that seat.
Yeah.
Of like even right now at our company, basically one of the right hands, like reporting directly to the CEO. I get to make decisions. I get to have impact. I get to collaborate and make decisions. It's a beautiful thing, but I didn't have to start from the ground and you then pull your resources together.
You really do conduct yourself in your business when there's no personal risk. Differently.
Yeah. And think about that too. If every entrepreneur wants great intrapreneurs. Because imagine if you had 50 people in a company and they're all entrepreneurs. That could be trouble.
Yeah.
You want the entrepreneurial spirit, but you want the entrepreneur that's going to take care of and complement. The entrepreneur is usually the one with the vision and they've got all of these ideas. They need people to implement them and execute. Because if not, a bunch of entrepreneurs run around with great ideas who don't implement anything is a company that goes broke.
Yeah. You got to execute on the ideas. And it's like Vaynerchuk talks about how a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs complain about, well, my people don't care about the business as much as I do. Well, there's a reason for that. They don't own it.
That's right.
And it's kind of like what you're saying. It's having entrepreneurial people is like having people that care as much as the owner.
That's it.
I guess,
that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. They're not going to care as much as though. That can't ever happen.
That's not the goal.
Right.
That whoever created that idea and that belief was living in some fantasy world.
Right.
You want people like myself, if you're an entrepreneur, that is like, man, I will do anything and everything. I own this, even though I don't own it.
Right.
I have ownership, right? Like, so extreme ownership. I was just going back through that book, one of my favorites. And I'm thinking, man, that's what you want to create, that culture. Because the entrepreneur, the founder, that's who they want. People that have ownership mentally show up that way, but they didn't put up the capital, right?
Right.
Like that's just some of the differences.
Yeah. That's a big difference, though. I mean,
big difference.
When you treat it a lot different.
That's why the upside is very different too.
Right. Let me take the risk with your money because I'll be willing to go out on that limb without any hesitation.
Right. I got an easy exit strategy. It's not all my money. Well, this goes back to too. I tell people is if you're not willing to investing in yourself, you're part of the product and service of that company.
Yeah.
If you don't invest in yourself, you're sending a message to the people that you report through that you really are not all in.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a differentiator right there.
You mentioned, and this is because I listened to a conversation you had before we went on the podcast, the hardest challenge with getting people to buy into themselves, invest in themselves, is just getting them to do it. Yeah. Why do you think there's so much resistance there?
I think one is people don't actually believe that if they invest the time, the energy, the effort, and the money, they're actually going to get their result. It's not going to happen for me. It's not for me, right? It's like almost like social. Well, I'm not going to do videos and get on social because all these other people, it worked for them. It wouldn't work for me.
Right.
I think there's the other camp, which is really a fascinating group, that they actually are afraid of success. You hear about this phenomenon that people that, well, what if I do it and then I get better and then more is expected of me?
Yeah.
There are people truly afraid of that. I've had it in my own life where I'm like, I started to experience success and I'm like, when are the wheels going to come off? When am I going to hit my peak?
I don't deserve this, right?
Right. I don't deserve it. I've been in rooms where I look around, I'm going, man, like, how did I get in this room with these people? So there's all these limiting beliefs that we have. So I think that's why people don't invest in themselves. And they've also never done it. And so they really don't have a track record. And they're wondering, could it be for me? And then they're also afraid of success. So you have to figure out which one you are. But look, at the end of the day, if you're not willing to bet on you, how can you ever expect someone to really bet on you?
And that's similar to what Rich Redmond talks about, people that want to get into the music business. He says famously that, it may not be on stage, it may not be as the artist, but it might be, the front of house mix engineer. It might be the monitor engineer. It might be one of the guys, maybe a drum tech, guitar tech. He says there's so many different facets and room for everybody in the business. You just got to find your place.
That's right.
Similar with like the influencer thought leader space in business, especially because there's multitudes of different categories, but mainly in business, there's a fraternity of people, top three, let's say, that just kind of dominate the messaging and stuff like that. And then every now and then you're going to get people that kind of pop into those slots and stuff like that. But do you think it's getting a really like saturated space over the past several years with, well, I can do that and I'm going to give my opinion, and some people have license to do it. A lot of people don't, so they're faking it till they make it. And I think a lot of people can figure that out by looking at whoever's doing it. Not certainly your case. You've gotten your scars, your battle scars. You've got the bandwidth.
We have results to back up.
Right.
So when I am very different than a lot of the guys that I think are new, and where it might be saturated is I think we all got very fed up with people showing up and magically you're a coach, but you've never actually had results in that area
or
that you're
owned
coaching
a business.
people. Right. Or owned a business or any of these things. You've never invested here or invested in yourself, but yet you want me to go do all these things. Like I think we can spot those and basically point out frauds is what I would say. Like they're just not being true. But is it saturated? I'd say no. And here's how we know it not to be saturated. Look at all of the new personalities and new people that have come out with books, podcasts, and they're able to monetize and sell value to the marketplace.
Yeah.
And people go, they're filling a void. So that's why I go back to find your competitive edge, find what you bring, who can you serve, and go out into the marketplace. I'll take myself, for example, my own journey. If the market was saturated, then how did I grow all the followers? How are we growing our mortgage team? Like adding, $1 billion in production in 60 days.
Wow.
The market's not saturated.
Right.
I know my market. I'm very clear on what I bring to the market. And so my market's not saturated. If you're feeling like it is, what I would say is you need to figure out who you are and get clarity on, because people don't know what you stand for or what you can do for them to make their life better. So like, yeah, it's just another fill in the blank.
Right.
They're just like that person.
Right.
And so I think that's where you can fall into different camps with it.
And it's funny, in my experience doing it for myself, I don't have a problem believing in myself and what I do. I know, like, almost like finding your competitive edge is finding a subcategory and sharpening that blade of what your big idea is, what you bring to the market. In my sense, I know what that is. And it's funny, I feel like I leave a lot of money on the table because I don't go about it in a transactional way. Yeah. Everything I do is like, I'm a huge fan of Vaynerchuk. His is all relational, to give.
Yeah.
I've got nothing to sell other than my podcast services, intros, things of that nature, voiceover services. And I got to figure out, do I have a course in me, And I think I do at some point. But it's like when it comes time to sell it, I don't want to be a promosexual and just constantly be putting that out there.
Yeah.
That is a Rich Redmond term, by the way. He uses that all the time.
I love it. So, well, and I would say those are limiting beliefs we all have.
Right.
That we just have to figure out what is it and then go to the market with it. Because the reality is everyone that's put out a course or a book or whatever they've done, like they probably at some point didn't think the world needed that.
Right.
But then they got to a point and go, you know what? I do solve a problem.
Certainly, yeah.
So how do I help people?
I just, it's being inside my own bottle, and that's where the limiting beliefs come from, is just having somebody else out there to see the label on my bottle. Okay, if I were you, here's what I'd do.
Yeah.
And that's one of my other things that I do, and I was razzed for it in the radio business with some of my earlier colleagues in Connecticut. They used to call me, "Oh, here comes Gilly." You know what you should do. That's what I would always say, because I would always have these ideas. I would listen to other people talking, and I'd be, "Oh, dude, you know what you should do is this." And I feel like that's what this podcast is in a way. Typically, with some guests, we'll get into those conversations. I'm like, dude, do this. And I just know exactly, my spidey senses going
that's
off.
Your competitive edge from doing the things that you've done. That's your experience. Now, you said something that I think people don't want to miss it. Once you find what your competitive edge is, please don't think you've landed at a destination.
Right.
That's when you just nail, like, sharpen the saw, sharpen the saw, sharpen the saw.
Yeah.
That's when you get great at it. Because the reality is, once you discover it and you figure that out, you're not done. You're not a finished product yet. So now we have to figure out, to your point, how do you get better at it? And then you can move into a spot where you can actually monetize that and serve people and feel good about what you're doing. And not like, man, I'm just selling another course. No, I'm changing a life. And one of my mentors told me this. It changed my perspective. He said, Brian, you have unique gifts. Like, God has uniquely gifted you with experiences and talents and a way to communicate and connect with people like no one else.
Yeah.
You holding those back is being selfish. You're being selfish by not sharing your gifts, your experiences. And that's what pushed me, was actually a catalyst in social. And I'm still working through this, right? Like I am by no means the expert or guru. And so some of my videos lately, I've just been sharing from what's there. Like, great example this week. I had probably 10 people at our leadership meeting come up and talk about either themselves or their kids playing soccer. That was our connection point. Had I not shared that I played soccer in my experience,
wouldn't have happened.
I mean, that's a basic one, right? You could be sharing things that you've overcome. You could be sharing successes you've had. If we don't share who we are and what we've done, we're not connecting and helping people. We're keeping it. That is selfish.
That's one of the things that B&I talks about all the time is, why do I get put on hobbies and, things that I like doing on the weekend? Because that's a connection point.
Yeah.
You never know who you're speaking with in a one-to-one, if what your commonalities are. I preach that with a guy. I teach a lot of people how to decommoditize what they do, especially if they want to start a podcast. Insurance people, for example, one person comes to mind in my B&I chapter. He says, well, would I do a podcast on insurance? I'm like, not unless you want to bore the tears out of people. I mean, what else?
Can you make it exciting?
You could certainly talk about products that you sell. I said, but what do you like doing? What do you like talking about that excites you? He goes, I actually really like high school basketball and talking about that. And I know all the teams and I know I've covered games. And I go, okay, well, there's probably a little bit of an audience there, especially with the local power that you can bring to the table with that.
Yeah.
What else do you like? He says, I like bow hunting. I'm like, ding, ding, ding.
Oh,
dude.
Man.
Okay. Well, what about bow hunting do you like? And he starts going off. I said, are you licensed in multiple states? Yeah. Okay. I said, are there products that you sell that would benefit hunters? Yeah. I go, okay. The bow hunting show powered by your insurance entity.
See how you just broke that down, though? That is part of your competitive edge.
I get, and I know that.
It just comes out naturally.
But how do I, mailbox money that? You know what I mean?
Well, that's the next facet. So it's like there's one thing of finding it, and then there's a next stage. There's stages to the game that then you figure out then how to deploy it.
Yeah.
But most people don't even know what it is. So how can you then go? That's why people that sell things or sell services go, I'm not fulfilled, or I'm on to the next transaction. You said that earlier. I'm like, you're on to the next transaction because you don't really connect with people because there's no connection point, and you're not really there to serve them. You're there just to make a commission or check.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think over the long term, it comes down to physical appearance or the value you bring that comes out of your mouth?
So help me understand what you're asking with.
There's a sex appeal with certain people. You know, they're good looking. They look good on camera. You know, I'm okay. I'm decent. I'm a dad, middle aged, whatever. You know, I kind of dress how I dress. It is what it is. Could I improve? Sure, and I'm working on that. But you know, do people automatically discount you in this day and age? Do you think in a certain way? Because of, you know, how you just appear.
Potentially. Yeah. So I'll tell you where it's come up in my life is I talk about fitness a lot. I talk about working out. I talk about the importance of keeping up your health.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if I talked about that and then you met me and I was significantly overweight, you saw me eating a cheeseburger and pizza all the time, drinking at the bar all night?
Right.
Would that be aligned?
Right. No.
Yeah. So what I say to people is like, if that's what you value, to me, it's more important than what you look. It's what you value. If you tell me you value something, if you value family, but you never spend time with your family,
right?
Help me make sense of that. Because if you tell me that, now I have a distrust level. So
there's
I think
disconnect.
What people are looking for. Now I'll jump into what I think you're asking, which is an important question. I do think people that take care of themselves have a competitive advantage.
Right.
They have a competitive edge. I know one of mine is I am physically fit at 45. I invest time, energy. It has become part of my identity. But guess what? I believe that helps me become a better spouse, a better dad, a better business leader. And I've inspired, I know people along the way that will drop me. I had one this morning. Man, I love seeing your workouts and your posts when you're traveling. Like, how do you travel and do your workouts? Connection point. I can help someone. At some point, I think you have to figure out what do you believe in, and then you have to walk the walk, right? Show people what winning looks like. For me, winning does incorporate a level of physical fitness and all that's there. Because I've been overweight. I know what it feels like. And I am not my best.
Right.
I've eaten crappy for years. We've had our first 2 kids, right? Like, and you lose that. So I do think there is an element that gives you an advantage.
Right.
Take Ed Milet. What do people think about when you first see Ed Milet?
He's a brick.
He's jacked.
Yeah, he's jacked.
Right. Former college baseball player, takes care of his health. Could you imagine if Ed talked about these things, but didn't actually back that up?
Right.
So I do think it gives people an advantage if you take care of yourself.
I can see that. I can agree with that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I'm not being taken seriously. You know?
I don't think I don't think that's it. But I will. Let's be real.
Yeah.
The people that are more physically fit and to the eye appealing on social media now, they are promoted more. They get a little bit of an advantage. But here's the thing: if you can't back it up, I don't care how good looking, how fit you are. If you had someone on there and they can't back it up with actual value, you're like,
There's a component to a BS meter that people have. Man.
You're just like, keep them over there. Glad you're fit. See you later.
Yeah. And it just doesn't feel right. There's something fake about it.
That's right.
Yeah. Getting back, and again, there was something that happened on the phone call that you had before we went live. And I thought about this, and I'm like, another edge that I have is the connection that I bring with people. I always know something. You got to talk to them.
Yes.
And you were mentioning how do I write this in a different way that's new, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you need to be introduced to the Wizard Academy. I don't know if you've ever heard me talk about that at all.
I had not until you mentioned it.
Okay.
I thought, wow, okay.
There's a place in Austin, Texas. It's called the Wizard Academy. The guy who created it wrote a trilogy of books, and it was big with us radio advertising marketing people, called The Wizard of Ads, and it is game-changing. It's a three-book set. Totally recommend you read it. His name is Roy H. Williams. He needs to be more famous, but for some reason he isn't.
Yeah.
He's one of those prolific thought leader guys that just doesn't want any of the limelight.
Sure.
And it's so sad when you think about it. It's like, dude, get on. And he's been on media. He's made most of his income in his professional life speaking to businesses for 25, 30 years. But it's like more people need to know who you are, man.
Yeah.
But
I want to check that out.
Yeah, I would recommend that for you guys. That will make you different.
Yeah.
As far as writing ad copy and how to do things and like that. You had mentioned before also being an author. And one of our shared guests that we both have had on, Mr. Jason Duncan, made a point on my podcast. He says, being a podcast host is almost more revered than being an author these days. Is that something you think about or agree with?
I like the combo, right? So for me, having both, I think has been one of those kind of competitive advantages, competitive edge for me. But the podcast game has elevated because of the connectivity. Yeah. I think where it's better today is that social currency. I can walk into rooms, I can go to events, never have met someone actually in person, but we've done a podcast together via Zoom, or you've been on a show that I've seen. The way that you build your network can happen faster. Where if I just sell a book, I don't really know who buys it unless they tell me.
Right.
A podcast, you know who's on. The amount of people this last week that said, hey man, I caught this episode, right? And I had the call earlier with Ben Newman.
Yeah.
One of the most listened to, the most great feedback. And I admire, Ben is one of those huge inspirations in my life.
Yeah.
And I think about that is living on. It's evergreen. It's living on forever, that people can go back, they search for Ben, they find my show, they go, who's this Brian Covey guy?
Yeah.
So I do think podcasting has more avenues to go through. But look, I don't think either one, it depends on what your goal is, right? Which one's better? Depends. What are you trying to accomplish?
Right. Now, you are big on self-improvement and learning and learning and learning. What's the most impactful thing you've done in the last 2 years that really changed your life? Because there is something different about you. You are a noticeably better speaker than when I first met you.
So that's taken an investment. And shout out to Renee Rodriguez, one of my coaches and mentors. I took 2 courses and they were basically 3 days, and you go through a small group, 8 to 10 people, and you critique and go through everything that's there. Layer that with all of the podcasting that I've done. I got intentional about the fact that I didn't believe I was a great communicator, but I wanted to be better.
Right.
I wanted to be able to make better impact. I listened to people and I thought, man, I would love to do what they do. And everybody thinks they can just wake up one day and because you have results, you can be a speaker. It's not how it works.
Right.
I got very focused and very intentional about that. And that's where I wanted to grow. And I wanted to get better at it. Well, how do you get better? Well, you get around people that are doing it at a higher level. And so when I go to mastermind events, I would listen. That's been the biggest breakthrough for me, because what I realized from that, now I negotiate deals better. I was able to negotiate as I moved, and an opportunity came, obviously, to change companies this last year. Had I not been able to communicate and built my brand and done all these things, that, guess what? They are all integrated. Speaking is no different than me getting in front of our team this week, our sales team of 100 branch managers, and sharing what I believe and how to help them move the ball down the field.
Yeah.
And so I realized the one most effective skill that I could get better at, that I was okay at, was communication. Effectively communicating. And you heard me earlier, I was very transparent, even with Ben, saying, man, here's what I need to work on next. There's levels to the game. And so that's the biggest breakthrough for me, because that's layered into multiple other opportunities that I've been asked to speak on stages, do things I never thought. Well, guess what? Unless you start doing it and getting serious about it, no one's going to take you serious about it.
Well, how can people listening help you? What are your goals in the next 5 years, and what do you want to accomplish?
Ooh, that is a great one. So from a family standpoint, I'll tell you, we got 2 older kids. I want to get them into college. Presley's going to play soccer, hopefully. That'll go well. I'm always looking to improve myself, right? So I think about this. If someone listening, man, what are your goals? Is to become the best version of Brian. In 5 years, I kind of think in 5-year increments.
Sure.
What I was able to learn and grow from 40 to 45, if I could do that from 45 to 50, times 5, times 10, times 20, whatever it is, would be incredible. So right now, my focus, my main machine, how do I continue to be a family man, show up for my family? The next one is building out our company at Revolution Mortgage.
Right.
Right. We are not trying to be the biggest and the baddest. We are trying to be the best. We absolutely want to grow a culture that people look at and go, that's what winning looks like. The other part that I already see myself moving into this world where people could help me is I do want to speak on more stages. I do want to make more of an impact. I think there's things in my life that I can help people through seasons that I've been through. I'm uniquely equipped to share that with them, especially around resilience. I mean, Jim, if we had enough time, we could talk through all the times that I've been cut, I've been fired, had my heart broken here. I've had failures in my life, things that have happened over and over, and I've developed a skill. It is not given to you. You develop the muscle and that skill of resiliency. And so if I could help people through a season, I believe that's what kind of God's calling me. How do I help people through tough times and come out the other side and be stronger? Which is part of why finding your competitive edge is so important to me, because I believe that's going to be the key for many people.
And that's it is teaching them it is always something, no matter what. Even when you're on top of the mountain, looking into the valley that you just came out of. It's always going to be something. And I almost forgot to ask this. So here.
What's your problem?
What is your problem, Brian? What are you dealing with that maybe we can help?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, you heard earlier, I am now going to be in charge of building out coaching program Mastermind for all of our 100+ branch managers across the company.
For Revolution Mortgage.
Revolution Mortgage.
Right.
Starting from the ground, baby. It's a white canvas.
Right. Well, I mean, how do you go about that? Is it a collective mind meld of all the branch managers of, individual? It's almost like asking your past 10 to 15 clients, how would you describe best to somebody else what it is that I do?
Yeah.
Which is something an exercise I lead people through in their own businesses. You know, I don't know what to talk about in my business. I said, okay, talk to the last 10, 15 people you had business with. How would you describe what I do? How would you recommend me to another person? Yeah. And in those, you're going to find that common thread. Is that the same kind of exercise you do with the branch managers of, okay, what's the biggest challenge you have coaching people with? Is that the question you lead, you think? Or
so after the call earlier that you got to hear and kind of listen in on, and you just saying that, the biggest problem is where to start many times.
Right.
I had some clarity. I had a breakthrough today is what I call it. Clarity of, I need to go back and ask people, what would a perfect coaching program look like? What are you looking for in a coaching program? To remember that I'm not the client. I'm administering this. And so that was a quick shift today that now I know where I need to go next. I know what my next step is, which is the most important as we make decisions. So my biggest problem was making it so big and complex. And where do I start? And I'm overthinking it and all these things. And it's like, hey man, if you slow down to ask the people that you're going to be training and coaching what they want.
Bottom up.
I mean, that sounds so simple, but that's the problem, and then working back into it. And then I'm sure there'll be phases of that as we grow it and build it.
Yeah.
But man, how cool is that? That you heard that as that conversation went on, and then you just said it. You're like, well, what would that program look like?
Right. And you look at a program like that, okay, what's the tip of the spear?
Right.
Is what I call it. In B&I, when people get up and they give their commercials in the room, the biggest challenge that anybody new to not only having their own business, but networking is how do I present my business? Well, it's a commercial. That means I get to beat my chest for 35, 45, 60. No, it doesn't mean that. Even in my radio days, when you bought a commercial in ad time, it didn't mean that you beat your chest. No, you got to meet the listener where they are and then get their attention first and foremost, and then identify the biggest problem you solve, right?
Yeah.
I mean, similar here, I guess, where you're talking to what's the biggest problem you have as far as teaching people and coaching people.
That's it.
And all the other topics will come out of that.
That's right.
As you have those conversations.
Too many times we get this analysis paralysis happening. And so even for myself, I mean, I'm sharing that with the audience today because it's like, man, I know what to do, but I didn't know where to start. And I made it too complex. And then it's like one person you ask the question. So if you don't share your problem, like we're doing right here, it's like, man, one person can solve that for you and go, hey, have you thought about this?
Yeah.
No, man, I haven't. Like, that's where I should start. That's how you solve problems.
It's quick. It's amazing how you can just step away. It's called in the audio production side of things. When I was in radio, back in Vegas, I had a computer that would crash like every 10 to 15 minutes.
Oh, no.
Most frustrating thing. So I would have these massive projects, multi-layer tracks and all this stuff going on, and the computer would crash. And autosave wasn't as good then as it is now.
Yeah.
So I would have to go restart the computer and then get my software loaded up and then hopefully left off at a certain point where in my editing, it was abysmally frustrating.
Yeah.
So, but what I learned from that was, man, when I come back to a project that I was previously working on, I know exactly how I want it to sound. I remember how to get there. And also I'm going to build upon that because my ears have been reset.
That's it.
Getting up and walking away from something, it's amazing.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I have those frustrations days and like you have a difficult conversation, something, you go for a walk, you fix that, you do all of that.
Yeah.
But I hope everyone listening takes away the fact that the longer you wait, your problem doesn't get solved. The quicker you ask for help and the quicker you share your problem, the quicker you can get a solution.
Action.
That is it, right?
Yeah.
And so you saw that in real time today.
Yeah. I mean, it's just sometimes it's amazing what comes out of these podcasts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Another example, real quick, we're building trade show panels for our lighting business, and the guy that was he's drilling all the holes and mounting all the lights to them and everything. We have a control button panel that needs to be mounted to it. And I'm looking at him, and he's trying to figure out where to drill in the actual material so the buttons will fit in. And he's measuring them out. And he goes, they're not exactly, specifically strategically measured. They're at different distances, but they're so micro. It looks aligned, but, And I'm like, well, have you thought about maybe putting liquid paper on the other end and just popping it on, and there's your markers? And then I look at the actual buttons. I'm going, dude, you can remove the buttons and just draw out the circle. He looks at me. He goes, I am an idiot. I'm like, no, you're not. You just haven't looked at it at a different angle.
Yeah, different perspective.
Crazy. Well, how can people find and follow you, Brian?
Oh, man, we've just revamped the new website. So www.briancovey.com. It's got the podcast, the book, all of the cool stuff there.
Right
and then I hang out a lot on Instagram. So someone took Brian Covey. So the Brian Covey.
The Brian Covey.
Yeah. So then we took all that over to Twitter and to TikTok and all that stuff.
The other aspect of it is that you have an interesting way to pronounce your last name. A lot of people think it's Covey.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Good Stephen Covey, Franklin Covey, all of those.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it's actually Covey.
It is Covey.
Yeah. That's a good actual little edge right there.
There's a story behind it. Another day.
Another branding element. Yeah. Well, there you go. All the information for Brian will be in the description, so make sure you hit him up, follow him, and all that fun stuff. And, of course, make sure you follow us. We're looking for 10,000 average downloads per episode. If we're worth it, share it out. Make sure people hear about it. Invite people to listen, and let me know if you think somebody would be a good fit to sit in the guest seat and have a conversation about what their problem might be. whatsyourproblempodcast.com. Check us out there. Really appreciate it. Of course, as always, Brian, a delightful conversation. Thanks for hanging out.
Dude, I love it. Appreciate you.